Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm sharing day 2 of the 12 days of Stitchmas. So I started yesterday with day 1. All of my videos for the 12 days of Stitchmas can be found in the same playlist. So if you missed yesterday's, it'll be in the same playlist as this video, and the rest of them will be in this playlist once they go live as well. So with each day of the 12 days of Stitchmas, I will be opening up one window and then creating a card with the stitching die that is in that particular window. So today's die is this Merry and Bright die set. I think you could go a lot of different ways with this. I am going to do a stencil and embossed background and then have the sentiment Merry and Bright right on top of it. So the dies come in that little cello pack there. I've shared in day 1 how I plan on storing them. I just have some very simple Ziploc bags that I got at the local dollar store, and I trimmed down that window door piece to fit in that bag and then put my dies in there. So I die cut the Merry and Bright out of gold mirror cardstock. Those ones don't have stitching pieces to them. The only one that has stitching elements to them is this and. So I die cut that out of poppy cardstock, and I'm using some gold floss to stitch it. So the gold floss is a little bit different from regular floss. It's a little bit thicker. So I don't take different strands. I use it as it comes on that roll. So I use one strand, and like I said, it is a little bit thicker than regular floss. It's a little bit stiffer as well. So I start on kind of in the middle of my die or my die cut, because I want to have space to put that little piece of best ever craft tape that I use to secure the ends of my thread. Now this is fairly narrow, so I actually use my detail scissors to trim that piece down so that it doesn't go outside of the ampersand die cut. Now I am using a stitch where I'm going forward one, then up the next one, and then back, so that I'm filling in all of the areas as I'm going. But you could easily also do a running stitch, which is going up one, down the next, up the next, down the next, all the way to the end, and then go back and then fill in all of those openings. Either one would work. You'll get the same result and the same look, so it doesn't really matter which way you do it. I tend to do this so that I'm going through the whole thing one time. However, it does take a little bit longer while you're doing the stitching, simply just because you're kind of going back and then up to the next one. So again, doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it however you like, but you do want to fill in all of those stitching pieces. Now I chose to do this with the gold floss because I have my Merry and Bright die cut out of that mirror gold cardstock, but you could even make these opposite. I could have done the Merry and Bright with red cardstock, done this with gold cardstock, and then stitched with red if I was going with just that color scheme. It could also work with really any color combination you like. You could even do this red and then stitch it with white floss or silver floss, whatever you like. I love the fact that with die cutting and with stitching dies, you can really get creative with your color palettes and just have fun with it. Might as well just have fun with your colors. For most of the cards, I plan on doing more of a traditional color palette. I did a non-traditional color palette last year for the most part, and wanted to kind of keep it traditional for these, but you can go whichever way you want. And that's the fun part about getting creative with them. So as I get towards the end of my piece here, I'm also going to be using a tiny little bit of that Best Ever Craft tape just to secure my die cut here. My thread here, to make sure that I don't have little thread ends that go outside of my die cut. Now, yesterday when I was doing my stitching, I mentioned that I like to cut out my stitching pieces a second time and glue that to the back of them to secure in that floss. I realized while I was stitching this one that I actually hadn't done that for this one. So I had planned on doing that afterwards, and then I ended up just not cutting that extra piece, but you can easily do that. I do prefer doing that for most pieces because it just secures that floss in there, makes it a little bit easier. But for this one, I don't think it really made that much of a difference. For the background of my card, I'm using some fern cardstock here. I have the Holiday Lights stencil as well as embossing folder. So this is a layering stencil set, and it has a coordinating embossing folder to it. So for my first layer, I'm using Pine Needles Distress ink for the upper parts of the lights. Because this stencil is quite a bit larger than my cardstock, I am using just pieces of painter's tape to mark the top right and left corners of that stencil, as well as the sides lower down. Typically, if my stencil is a little bit smaller, I'll do the top left and the bottom right and just do opposite sides, and that is enough. But because my stencil went off of my sticky mat here, this is what worked, and it just makes it really easy for lining up different layers. For my second layer, I wanted my lights to have a metallic finish to them, and I wanted them to coordinate with the gold Merry and Bright, as well as my gold floss. So one of these layers for the lights is going to have silver ink, one is going to have gold ink. This is metallic ink from Lisa Horton Crafts. This silver covers so well, and you can see when I tilt these into the light, once my metallic lights are on there, that it is definitely covering over top of that fern cardstock. And the metallic lights just look really great for the holiday cards. I wanted to use colors that were Christmassy, were holiday-ish, but I didn't want to have a ton of colors. I didn't want to have my background kind of trying to take attention away from my sentiment, my stitching dies here. So for my second layer, I'm using that gold metallic for the next set of lights. There's only 3 different layers in this embossing folder set, so it's really easy to do. And because of those little tape marks on my sticky mat, it's really easy to line up the different layers. So I don't have to spend a lot of time making sure that I have it layered exactly right. So this stencil piece is completely done. Look at that metallic of that ink. It really covers that background really well. But again, it's not going to take away attention from my sentiment that I have on the front. So I'm using the stacking for my Platinum 6 machine for 3D embossing folders because this is a 3D embossing folder. And it just adds that extra texture as well as little cords for the lights by doing that embossing. So I love doing both of those together. If you wanted to do this background without having the lights colored, you could just use that embossing folder and that would look great as well. It would tie into the theme of Merry and Bright, but it wouldn't add any extra color to it. So the piece of poppy cardstock that I cut that ampersand out, I'm going to use that as a mat. You can see I cut that out right in the center. My stenciled embossed piece here is going to get glued right on top of there. I'm using some Barely Art glue in a fine line bottle. I use this for pretty much all the cards that I create. I love using liquid glue because it gives you that wiggle room to move and shimmy things in place before it dries. So I love that little bit of forgiveness and the little bit of time that it gives you. I also like the fact that with a fine line bottle, I can get really tiny bits of glue, or I can use it for assembling my card. So it gives you, you can do both things with it. So I'm going to start with that ampersand first in the center of my card, and then I'm going to start with the center letter of each one of the words. Now Bright, it would be the I and the G. So I have those kind of split between the center, and then I work my way out with the letters. Now, when you're looking at it now, you can't really see the letters quite as much, but once I have the glue dried and I tilt it into the light, because I used mirror cardstock, it really shines in that light and really, you can really see it a lot better. If you wanted the background to be a little bit more subtle, just leaving off the stenciled part of those lights would do that. Just having them just embossed with your cardstock would easily take that little bit of metallic off the background, but I really love the look of those lights in that metallic ink. Couldn't use distress ink for those lights because distress ink is transparent, so you wouldn't see as much of the color, and also the green of that cardstock would interfere with whatever color you were stenciling. So if you wanted to use other colors, you definitely need to make sure that it is an opaque ink. Oxide inks would probably work better than regular distress inks because they have that pigment property to them. But again, I wanted to keep them fairly subtle and not compete too much with my sentiment here. And I love that this die set is really quite simple, just the Merry and Bright, and I think it could be used for many different Christmas cards and holiday cards. So once I have that done and that glue has dried, you can see that when I tilt it into the light, the letters of the Merry and of the Bright do catch that light. Perfect for holiday creations and just something simple. And this would make a great scrapbook title as well, or scrapbook page title as well. Thank you so much for joining me for the day 2 of the 12 days of Stitchmas. I will see you back again tomorrow for day 3.